President Trump saying that peace talks are moving forward slowly but surely in the conflict with Iran. This after the president reportedly had a heated conversation with the Israeli Prime Minister. Trey Yingst is live in Tel Aviv to take us through this one and where we are now on the war. Trey, hello to you.
Yeah, hey, Bill, good morning. As President Trump works toward a deal with Iran, he was able to de-escalate rising tension between Israel and Hezbollah yesterday, getting on the phone with both sides. The president said in a post on Truth Social, quote, "I had a conversation with Bibi Netanyahu today, asking him not to go into a major raid of Beirut, Lebanon. He turned his troops around. Thank you, Bibi. I also had a conversation with representatives of the leaders of Hezbollah, and they agreed to stop shooting at Israel and its soldiers. Likewise, Israel agreed to stop shooting at them. Let's see how long that lasts. Hopefully it will be for eternity." Axios reports the call between Trump and Netanyahu was tense. This is a piece of the outlet posting yesterday, quote, summarizing Trump's remarks to Netanyahu. The U.S. official said, "You're effing crazy. You'd be in prison if it weren't for me. I'm saving your A. Everybody hates you now. Everybody hates Israel because of this." A second source briefed on the call said Trump was, quote, pissed, and at one point yelled at Netanyahu, "What the F are you doing?" Now, at this moment, Israeli troops remain in southern Lebanon. Overnight, there were a few sirens across northern Israel from Hezbollah rocket and drone attacks, as well as a small number of Israeli strikes in Lebanon. Civilians in the Lebanese capital of Beirut are breathing a sigh of relief following evacuation orders that were issued by the Israeli military on Monday.
We were certainly happy about U.S. President Trump's intervention. We were glad that a ceasefire was reached and that people got some relief from the displacement, suffering, and difficult conditions they have been living through. It's truly heartbreaking. We are a people. We are human beings. We are not enemies of anyone, and we do not want war. We were very happy when we heard that Trump had become involved in the issue.
More than 3,400 people have been killed in Lebanon since the war restarted again earlier this year. We do know talks are taking place this week between the Lebanese and Israeli governments aimed at reaching a deal to normalize ties and disarm Hezbollah.
Something to watch. Thank you, Trey. Trey Yingst reporting in Tel Aviv. Jillian's got it.
All right, let's go ahead and bring in retired U.S. Navy Commander Kirk Lippold. He's former commander of the USS Cole. Sir, regarding this Trump-Netanyahu phone call and the reporting surrounding it, does anything in there surprise you?
I think what surprises me a little bit, Jillian, is the intensity of the call. President Trump is really trying to work a deal with Iran so that they do not get a nuclear weapon. But by the same token, you have to remember, Bibi Netanyahu has to look out for the strategic interests of his country. Given what happened in October 7th, given what Hezbollah has been doing for literally decades in firing into Israel, he has to make sure that his people are safe. I think Israel at this point has reached a point where they're like, no, we are not going to tolerate this anymore, and we're going to go after those who mean to do us harm.
It's a great illustration of the reality that no matter how close the special relationship is between the United States and Israel, on certain issues, at certain moments, the interests between the two countries diverge. And that's just the way, global relations work. Interestingly, sir, you say that even though the regime has now said they don't want to negotiate with the U.S. anymore, they have not adjusted their military posture in a way that reflects that to be the truth. Can you talk to us about that?
Absolutely. Iran right now is still working to try and rebuild what the United States destroyed. They are still setting up their radar sites. They're still tracking the shipping within the Strait of Hormuz. They are still working to be able to launch drones. They have attempted to put mine-laying vessels out into the waters. The United States has struck at each of those in the defensive measures with the Central Command Commander, Admiral Cooper. But at the end of the day, right now, even though they say they have walked away, those negotiations are still going on. If Iran knows that if they walked away from the negotiating table, that would put the United States in a position where they would have no choice but to restart kinetic operations against them. And if combat operations ensue, the United States this next time is not going to hesitate, not going to pause. President Trump is going to utterly destroy them and then begin to take down the infrastructure that supports their economy so that it will literally drop them to the knees, in addition to what we are trying to do with the blockade that's in place.
Everybody is very focused on the timeline with this conflict from the very beginning of Operation Epic Fury. Do you think it's important? Do you think there is some kind of obvious deadline or point that we reach in the imminent future where this continuation of the conflict becomes problematic, or do you think President Trump really just has a free hand here?
I think President Trump is doing his best. He is trying to give diplomacy every last chance to work. But at the end of the day, Iran continues to undermine it. Let's face it, they have a 47-year track record of not being truthful, of lying, of continuing to work to undermine and destabilize the Middle East. President Trump may be trying to do it, but at some point, time is no longer going to benefit the United States as much as it's benefiting Iran and their ability to rebuild. The last thing the U.S. needs to do is give Iran the free hand that they want to allow them to rebuild, to project power, to be able to continue to strangle the Strait of Hormuz and destabilize the Middle East.
Well, the coming days will certainly be illuminating in that sense. Commander Lippold, thanks for joining us this morning. Great to talk to you as always.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.